On a Thursday afternoon, just 3 days ago, a terrible event unfolded in Ahmedabad. Air India flight AI-171, a modern Boeing 787-8, was scheduled to fly from Ahmedabad to London. It carried 230 passengers and 12 crew members, all with their own stories and destinations. The plane took off from the runway at 1:39 p.m., beginning its journey into the sky. However, something went catastrophically wrong within moments of leaving the ground. The plane did not climb as it should have. Instead, it struggled to gain height, a frightening sign for anyone watching from below. The journey that was meant to cross continents ended tragically in less than 2 minutes. The aircraft, so full of promise and technology, failed to clear the airport's boundary. It struck a tree before crashing into a boys' hostel at the nearby BJ Medical College. The impact was devastating, leading to an immediate and massive fire. The loss of life was immense. Of the 242 people on the flight, all but one are confirmed to have died in the crash. The tragedy extended to the ground as well, where 3 medical students lost their lives and several others were injured. The news sent shockwaves through the community and across the world, turning a routine departure into a national tragedy. Investigations began immediately, with experts from India's aviation authorities, the DGCA and AAIB, arriving at the scene. Their goal is to understand what happened and why. They must piece together the final moments of Flight AI-171 to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, often called the black boxes, will be crucial in this effort. These devices hold the key to the aircraft's last communications and technical status. Finding them and analyzing their data is the top priority for the investigation team as they work amidst the wreckage. The human cost of this disaster is staggering. The victims came from different countries, including India, Britain, Canada, and Portugal, reflecting the global nature of air travel. Among the deceased were former Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani and the flight's experienced crew, Commander Sumit Sabharwal and First Officer Clive Kundar. As the sad news spread, families rushed to the city, hoping for information. The process of identifying victims is slow and painful, relying on DNA testing. As of today, June 15, 2025, only a small number of victims have been identified and returned to their loved ones, leaving many families in a state of agonizing uncertainty. Early analysis of the crash footage has revealed a deeply confusing picture. Investigators are looking at 3 strange things about the plane's condition right before it crashed. These details do not make sense when put together, creating a puzzle that experts must now solve. The first strange sign involves the plane's wings. The flaps, which are movable panels on the back edge of the wings, were retracted. This means they were pulled in, not extended. For a plane to take off safely, it needs its flaps extended. This changes the wing's shape to create more lift, the force that pushes the plane upward, especially at low speeds. With its flaps in, the plane would have struggled to get off the ground. The second confusing detail is about the landing gear. The plane's wheels were still down, even though it had already taken off. Normally, pilots retract the landing gear very soon after the plane is airborne. They do this to make the plane more streamlined and reduce drag, which is the force that slows the plane down. Flying with the gear down is like driving a car with a parachute open behind it. It creates a lot of resistance and makes it much harder for the plane to gain speed and height, so the plane was flying with high drag, which is the exact opposite of what a climbing aircraft needs. The third and final piece of this strange puzzle is the plane's attitude, or the angle of its nose. The nose of the Boeing 787 was pointing high up into the air. This nose-up position is normal during the initial moments of takeoff, as the pilot pulls back to lift the plane off the runway. However, maintaining such a steep angle without enough lift and with high drag is a recipe for disaster. It is a posture that suggests the plane was trying to climb aggressively, but the other signals, the retracted flaps and extended gear, meant it simply could not. The plane was in a state of conflict with itself. Putting these 3 signs together paints a portrait of an aircraft in a state of profound confusion. It was trying to climb, as shown by its high nose angle, but it was not properly configured to do so. The retracted flaps meant it did not have enough lift to support the climb. The extended landing gear created immense drag, holding it back. It is like a runner trying to sprint uphill while wearing heavy boots and carrying a massive weight. The plane was fighting against basic laws of physics, a battle it was destined to lose. This impossible combination of signals is where the investigation will focus its attention. With such contradictory evidence, investigators must consider several possible causes for the crash. One major area of focus is human error. Flying a modern airliner is a complex task that involves two pilots working together perfectly. They follow specific checklists and procedures for every phase of flight, especially takeoff. Did the pilots become confused? Was there a miscommunication in the cockpit? Perhaps they missed a critical step in their pre-flight or takeoff checklist. It is possible they believed the flaps were extended when they were not, or they became distracted and forgot to raise the landing gear. These are difficult questions, but they must be explored to understand if a mistake was made. Another possibility is that the pilots were not at fault, but the machine failed them. A mechanical or system failure could explain the strange configuration of the plane. Perhaps the system that controls the flaps malfunctioned, preventing them from extending even though the pilots had commanded them to. Or maybe the landing gear system jammed, making it impossible to retract the wheels. Modern planes like the Boeing 787 rely heavily on complex computer systems. A failure in the flight control computers could have sent confusing or incorrect information to the pilots or directly to the plane systems, creating this dangerous and conflicting state. Beyond simple pilot error or mechanical failure, there could be a more complex scenario at play. Some experts suggest the plane's state might be explained by a botched go-around. A go-around is a procedure where a plane that is about to land suddenly aborts the landing and climbs again. While this was a takeoff, a similar state of confusion could arise from a severe and unexpected event right after liftoff. For example, a sudden loss of engine thrust or a major system alert could have triggered a confusing series of actions and automated responses, putting the plane into a configuration that was neither for takeoff nor for landing, but a dangerous mix of both. The investigation will also have to look into the history of the aircraft and its manufacturer. A news report mentioned that a Boeing whistleblower had previously raised concerns about a pattern of issues at the company. While this is unconfirmed, investigators will certainly review the maintenance records of this specific aircraft and look for any known issues with the Boeing 787 model. Every possibility must be on the table. Was it the pilots, the plane's mechanics, its computers, or an external event? The truth is likely hidden in the data from the black boxes, which will provide a second-by-second account of the flight's final tragic moments. While investigators focus on the technical data, the stories from people on the ground provide a harrowing human perspective of the crash. Eyewitnesses near the airport reported seeing the Air India jet flying alarmingly low right after it took off. They described a plane that was struggling, not soaring. Their accounts consistently mentioned that the sound of the engines was not right. It was not the powerful roar of a healthy aircraft climbing into the sky. These observations from ordinary people often provide vital clues that can help investigators build a more complete picture of what happened in the moments leading up to the impact. The final terrifying moments of the flight were marked by loud sounds and a massive explosion. Several witnesses reported hearing 3 distinct loud bangs before the plane crashed. This could suggest engine trouble or a series of structural failures as the aircraft lost its battle to stay in the air. Immediately following the impact, a huge plume of thick black smoke rose into the sky, visible for miles around. This smoke was a signal of the intense fire that had erupted, fueled by the jet's massive fuel load. The first responders who rushed to the scene were met with a scene of utter devastation and chaos. The official investigation is now the only path to concrete answers. The team from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, is meticulously collecting evidence from the crash site. They will analyze every piece of the wreckage, study the flight path, and listen to the cockpit voice recordings. They will also review the flight data recorder, which tracks hundreds of different parameters, from the position of the flaps and landing gear to the performance of the engines. This process is slow, deliberate, and requires painstaking attention to detail. It is a scientific process designed to find the cause, not to place blame. For now, everything we know is preliminary. The analysis of the plane's strange configuration is based on initial observations and footage. The discussions about pilot error or mechanical failure are just theories. The complete and official report will likely take many months or even over a year to be finalized. Only then will the families of the victims and the public have a clear and factual explanation for the loss of Flight AI-171. Until that day comes, we must rely on the careful work of the investigators and wait for the truth to emerge from this heartbreaking mystery.